Posse Packer Nation. Welcome to another episode of Packcast, the podcast where you don't have to be a Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom frackin' Grossi, and I have been looking forward to this day for quite some time. You might be staring at your screen right now going, wait a minute. Who is that incredibly attractive gentleman? And Tom, who is that? Who is that? And ladies and gentlemen, it's Lions Week. And so I thought it was only appropriate to bring on a legend, an icon of the Tom Grossi YouTube channel. Oh, this is where we're going with it. The eyes are starting to get filled with recognition. Ladies and gentlemen, Jim frackin' B.
Hello, Packcast audience. So glad I could be here to share this misery with all of you.
Jim B, I cannot tell you how happy and elated I am that you are on this show right now.
Well, do your best. Use your words. Try it out, man.
Yeah, okay. I think this be good.
Perfect.
Nailed it. And Jim B, as promised, because you have a beverage, I have a beverage. Now it's a show. Cheers, my friend.
Cheers.
What are we drinking this fine evening?
This is the cocktail that I created in the throes of lockdown. This is the Packcast.
So it's just like bleach or?
No, I'll put the specific recipe in the comments for this video when it comes out, but it includes vodka, Midori, lemon juice.
Makes sense.
And a tiny bit of chartreuse. You put in a tiny bit, otherwise your mouth will kick you in the head later out of anger.
Wow. That's phenomenal. And that sounds delicious.
It is. I finally found the right proportions, and you just, put a little piece of lemon peel and wrap, swivel it around the rim. It adds something to the drink. And you may notice that it's not exactly a dark color of green, but I decided it needed to be this shade of green, especially for you, Grossi, just to remind you that the Seattle Seahawks live rent-free in your head.
This was going so well. I complimented your drink. I complimented so many things, and just right off. Listen, you got to live up to the moniker, because Jim B, I'm gonna put football to the side for right this second, because I feel like we got to talk about some stuff here.
Okay, absolutely.
I don't want to put that to the side. So, Jim B, you shocked the world. You shocked the world when we did the 100K video. Because, as you know, I gave opportunities for fans, to kind of send in some videos, repping the Packcast merch, repping the Grossi Posse merch. And I think it was like a week or so before the video, because all the submissions were there. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to leave them for when we get close to 100K, because we hit 90 in June. And then it was 2 months before we were or 3 months before we were actually going to hit 100. I think it was the week of. And I was like, oh, cool. Jim B sent one. And I watch it. And at the very end, it's revealed that you're wearing a Lions hat. That is the one. And I have to say, it rocked me to my core, because I remember watching, because I was going through a bunch of videos and I saw it, and I literally just stopped and I was like, just an inside joke kind of thing. Maybe he made an innuendo of haha, Lions suck. And I watched it again and I was like, oh no, it's that. Yeah. So please explain to me how a Lions fan found their way over to not only be a fan of the channel, but rise in the ranks to infamy level, all while maintaining your illusion.
Okay. You want the short version?
I want the longest version you could possibly give me.
Okay.
Start with your childhood.
I could possibly give you. All right. So we do start in childhood, actually. So I'm used to disappointment, because I grew up in the DC area and I was a Washington fan. Yeah.
Hey. Yesterday was nice.
No, I was happy for the team. I was happy for Alex Smith. I really was. It was an exciting thing to watch.
100%.
However, I got this weird experience because in my 0 to 10 years in childhood, I grew up in like the heyday of, Joe Gibbs coaching and, the hogs on the offensive line and the crazy Hoggette fans were the overweight guys who wear pig noses and dresses to the games and, did all sorts of charity work and were just a wonderful spectacle to see.
Yeah.
So I got a little bit of that on the periphery. I wasn't really aware of it. But then the owner, Jack Kent Cooke, died and his foundation ended up selling to Daniel Snyder. And by the time I started becoming a really enthusiastic fan, they were being driven into the ground.
Yes.
And so I got the experience of watching the team that I loved just absolutely destroyed by somebody who thought that they knew how to build a football club when their greatest experience was Six Flags. So, ugh. And so I kind of gave up on being a serious fan because I found myself getting really angry when the team would do bad, and I just found it really horrible and unhealthy for me. So I left football behind for a while. Years passed, moved out to Chicago. And have you ever been to Chicago?
I have.
Funds? Okay. Like Chicago is a big sports city.
Yes.
Yeah. Not just because of the misplaced anger or the heroin. Like there are teams, for almost every section of the city. And like a lot of people bring their fandoms with them, like the Big 10, Big 12, NFC North is represented. Hell, there's even a punk club over on Lincoln Avenue that has a Bills bar.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fun, like most fun football experience I ever had here was at a Kansas City Chiefs bar for the playoffs when they were playing the Texans. And the fans were so nice, and they bought the Texans fans beers and said, "Hey, listen, we're beating the crap out of you, but we will probably get our ass kicked. You'll come back and kick our ass. It's okay." It was so nice and so fun.
So wholesome.
So wholesome. Like I loved that, just that supportive atmosphere. I decided when I was like, okay, I'm enjoying football again, I might as well throw my hat in the ring for a team. And just one day I went to a sort of secondhand clothes store with a friend of mine, and they like specialize in like video game and like old sports memorabilia.
Right.
And they had a hat rack of like winter hats for teams, but they only had 3 teams in the rack. And those teams happened to be the 49ers, the Vikings, and the Lions. And I thought my brain just said to myself, I want a sports hat. I like blue. And that's how I became a Lions fan.
So, okay. So hold on. So like I got the most extensive, wonderful background, and it's like building up. And you're like, I went to the Salvation Army and there were 3 hats, and I was like, yeah, sure, why not this one?
Pretty much. That's the thing though. Like my background turned out to be like pretty serendipitous as far as being a Lions fan, because like since the Fords bought the team, the fan base has known nothing but misery and smashed hopes.
Yes.
And so I realized that I'd really made the right choice.
You're just like, listen, change is not always good. So I'm just going to keep this feeling in perpetuity. Yeah.
But also, I was also a really big hockey fan. When I was a kid. That was my really big sport. And the Washington Capitals broke my heart year after year in the playoffs. So when they finally won the cup a couple of years ago, I was, so happy and so glad that I was like, yes, it does pay off. It will happen. It can happen, and that's kind of my goal now. I want to be there, just to celebrate when they finally break. Like I was here when the Cubs won the World Series and the city just absolutely lost their mind. They were so elated. And I myself had a parade of screaming people going past my window well into the morning. And I was just thinking, I hope they don't win for another 100 years after this. I just got to go to work. But, that's really what I'm waiting for now is, just keeping my fingers crossed. And I'm not going to base my life and live or die around whether they win the Super Bowl, but it will be great to see them, finally get over that hump and get the Lombardi.
Yeah, and that, it's funny because I've obviously talked to many Lions fans, and I've talked to many like Browns fans. Like the themes were exactly what you're saying. It's like, listen, all I've known is pain. Like that's all there's been. So when it does pay off, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, whenever, when it does happen, it's going to be just such a release, and it's going to be amazing. And you could be like, hey, I was there. Like I was there at the ground level, and I bought in early.
Exactly. I mean, to use my other example, the Cubs fandom for like the years before that, like they basically treat Cubs games like a party.
Yeah.
The unofficial motto of Wrigleyville is, did you like college? Did you wish it would last forever? Welcome to Wrigleyville. And, the baseball game was always kind of second best, and it was just a nice surprise on top
if they won,
when the team was doing well.
Yeah. There you go. I mean, that sounds solid. So I have to point out two things about your story. One, thank God you didn't pick the Vikings, because this would have been a very different conversation. that would have been.
I had some bad childhood memories of the Vikings beating up on Washington, so I was going to be kind of steered away from those. And my mom actually is a Chargers fan.
Oh.
And yeah, like she spent a good portion of her life in San Diego, and that was the football team she glommed onto. And so the only time that she really got to see them, go anywhere was when they got smacked around in the Super Bowl by the 49ers.
Yeah.
So, that was kind of like, for my mom's sake, I'm not picking the 49ers.
That makes sense. Okay. So really it was just pure destiny that one random hat happened to be there, and it really chose you. It's like a starter Pokemon. It chooses you, and you're like, okay, this is the one I'm going to go with. Okay.
Exactly. But also I really like blue.
But you like, I mean, that we got to talk about priorities here. So absolutely the blue definitely kicks in there. So, okay. And then I have to also bring up, so you moved to Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Was there any point where you're like, maybe I'll give the Bears a shot?
I ran into too many Bears fans for that to be a reality.
Oh, I love that answer so much. That might be one of my favorite answers in the history of this podcast. Okay. You know what? There's no need for elaboration. I got it. I so got it. So you do all that, you become a Lions fan. And then when did you start? I feel like it's been a while now. You've been a while.
Sorry, I had to.
Yeah, a little bit. You've been part of the posse for quite some time now.
Yeah, I'm not old. I'm sort of like a mid-level guy. I'm no secret underdog or Luke or any of those guys. But I ended basically the YouTube algorithm kind of steered me your way. Somehow or another, I ended up watching Urinating Tree. I think he just got randomly recommended to me one time.
Gotcha.
One of his lolcow videos, and it was like, all right, I'm digging this. It's cool. The righteous anger and the histories of the team, I can dig that.
Yeah.
And then it just pointed you to me. And I was like, all right, cool. And it was a combination of I think the willingness to talk to other people's fans and just the absolute it was the energy, really, the energy that I got from your videos and from the people in the chat that made me want to stick around. And like I told you, it was that broadcast with the Cowboys and the Bears with your dad calling him Trubinsky over and over again, and that just being established as his name from then. I was like, this is my channel. They're willing to just rip on people for the sake of it. It's a game. It's supposed to be fun.
Hell yes. Yeah. Well, Jim B, it's absolutely. You've been a staple now in which there is lore for you on the channel. The never-ending saga between, of course, Team Jim B and Team Jimmy, which rages on like wildfires in the night.
Yeah, I'd like to point out that most of the attacking is done on Jimmy's end. I do not go after him because I believe this is a community for people to come together. And I I would just like to point out that I have never once, taken any of Jimmy's profiles pictures and attempted to imitate him in the chat, or done that to any of the other mods, for example.
Oof. There are shots being fired at this current moment.
There's a reason you're not getting a new Xbox, Jimmy.
That's it, buddy. You know. If you know, you know. And so, Jimby, I'm so happy you're on this journey with us, because I do want to get kind of your thoughts. You're talking about kind of the bog of eternal stench that the Detroit Lions have been. And listen, I talk about the Lions every year, and I feel like every year I start off and I'm like, yeah, this could be it. Like, they could be that wild card team. Like, they're the ones who could sneak it. I thought about it this year too, because I was like, maybe when Matt Patricia was done trying to turn Matt Stafford into Tom Brady, like, maybe we could finally get there.
Yeah.
And then
that was his mistake, though. That was his mistake, though.
Yeah.
Is that, and this was something that I learned in my prior life doing improv comedy. Is that, building a bit, building a scene, is that you establish something that becomes a rule of the universe that you're creating right there, and that you build upon it and becomes something weird or glorious or dramatic or sad or ideally funny. And that is one of the best ways, to build something that is great, strong, and can be appreciated, like a house, brick by brick by brick by brick from the ground up. Patricia, not working with what was there and essentially trying to force, this hexagonal peg into a triangular hole, and doing it with the attitude of, I came from this winning culture, I know what it's all about. That
yeah, I get you. So at what point, because I found that the fan base was kind of split on this. Like, I feel like after the first year, they're like, okay, it didn't work out, we'll give Patricia another shot, right? Like, we'll see what happens. And I want to say, like, last year, it looked more like Matt Stafford, in which it was like, okay, you're kind of like letting him play to his strengths a little bit. Like, okay, maybe there's going to be some improvement. At what point are you looking at it? Is it this year? Is it last year that you're like, yeah, no, this is not going to work out with Patricia?
It was the year that he was hired and they didn't make the playoffs. Because they had 2 playoff appearances under Jim Caldwell, going 9-7, but still 9-7 gets you into the playoffs, then it gets you into the playoffs, and that's all that matters.
Yep.
And, to regress like that, with, the same talent that you have, or taking measures to improve it, that's just not cool. And, hearing, whispers come out of the team that, he had an attitude and that the players didn't respect him. And through a lot of the angrier Lions fans that I have, watched and listened to about this, once, the fans just care about results. The players, they want a leader, but they also want somebody who isn't going to make them feel like they're, complete fuck ups every time they step onto the field. And Matt Patricia, he just didn't feel like he earned the right to be a gigantic asshole to the players.
Yeah, I get that. At least have some results behind it. Like, if you're going to be a total toolbox, like, at least you earned it and be like, okay, you know what? At least he's letting go. He's making us win games.
It's just, in any situation where a safe word is involved, you have to make sure you have earned the right to take a dump on somebody.
100%. That's a rule that goes beyond football, but yes.
Absolutely, in every facet of life.
And so, so Matt Patricia obviously gets fired. Which, listen, talking about Cubs winning the World Series, like that's
no, it's not Cubs winning the World Series. It's like, our long regional nightmare is over.
I see.
I don't know if the guy they've got now, they're going to keep him through the rest of the season, but I am going to, hope that he does well on the interim basis and they at least, finish out 500 under the games that he plays. I would love that.
Yeah.
Because it would show that the team is better without Patricia than it was.
Yeah. And listen, I mean, 1-0. Beat
Yeah,
the Bears.
absolutely. That is the start. And to be honest, I know this is going to sound controversial, but I think that the Lions should have drafted Jordan Love.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the things that I have noticed, through years keeping the Lions in my periphery, but even more so, is that Matthew Stafford has gotten knocked around like a pinball in a machine, essentially. All of the injuries, all the brutality, and it's a little better this year, but not by much.
Sure.
I think that panic is still in him, that he's got to get rid of the ball quickly. He is rushed. He doesn't have the time like Rodgers does in the pocket. And, that's something I think that the Packers have, they've realized they got a good quarterback. They got to protect him. And, that's a thing that teams forget. They can't just, win on the strength of a quarterback. If the quarterback's dead in week 7, then you are completely screwed.
Yep.
Is why Washington, was strong for so many years in the 80s and early 90s because of those Hogs, aside from the unfortunate incident with Joe Theismann, because they protected the quarterback, and that kept them in contendership all those years. So, I think this was the time for them to, start with somebody new and do the same thing that you've been saying the Packers are doing with Jordan Love. Keep him on the bench. Let him learn from Stafford,
Yeah.
and, build up his knowledge, build up his confidence, so that in a couple of years, if, Stafford falls off, or we decide, hey, let's give you to a team where you can maybe get a shot at a title because we know we're not there yet, they can start that established rookie. And, just like, Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers, in a way, the good quarterback play can continue.
Yeah. Now, did you think that they should have drafted him over Okuda? Like, do you think that they should have gone like that early? Or is it more of like trade out of that spot so then you can pick him up later in like the first round?
I think they probably could have gotten him in the second round, to be honest. I mean, I would have taken Okuda. The fact that, he hasn't been lighting the world on fire this season is a little bit of a disappointment. But just to have somebody who was established as a good player in college, that people would say, oh, this is a noteworthy person. What are you going to do with him? We're going to build him up so that he can, go out and be an all-star, get his game on, go play,
Very much so.
And I think that's also got to be a shift in the mindset that the Lions need to have, is not we're just going to, buy stars and win now. It's got to be, we got to establish a culture of consistency, and, realize where our strengths are, where our weaknesses are every year, and plan for those as best we can, and not expect, one new player that we draft in the first round to come around and save us. That doesn't work out. That never works out.
No.
I mean, nobody expected Washington, to suddenly become a defensive powerhouse. This season.
Yeah. I mean, and it's years through the draft too. Like, it's completely like Dylan, like Montez Sweat, obviously Chase Young, they slowly year after year built up that defense. Like, and it was through being crappy, right? And getting those really, really high draft picks. So you're basically saying, like, if the Packers don't go for Jordan Love in the first round, if he's there in the second round, like, take him.
Absolutely. Or at least, show that they have an eye toward the future. Pardon me.
I was about to say, is that a kitty?
Yes, it is.
That's the kitty.
That's the kitty paying the cat tax.
There we go.
Hello, Internet. This is Angie. She is the angry Chargers fan of the household. She is upset that the Chargers are ruining Justin Herbert in the prime of his career. As you can tell, it's just unbridled rage.
Now this show has had it all. Like, we've had custom drinks, we've had cat taxes, we've had it all. Like, that's it.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Yeah. I am hoping the fact that Sheila is now essentially running the team, that things are different.
Yeah.
I have a little bit of hope for that. And I have two reasons for that. One, that photo of her that got spread around online when the Lions lost on Thanksgiving, of her sitting in the owner's box with her hands over her face.
Yeah.
I don't think she's had too much public exposure in regards to, being associated with, football and the Detroit Lions like that. So
Sure.
that probably threw her for a loop. And second of all, this is actually reminding me of another franchise coming back from the brink, the Chicago Blackhawks, where I don't know how much you know about them, but for years they were a bad to mediocre hockey squad. At a certain point, their owner actually instituted a local TV blackout whenever the games didn't sell out. So if the Blackhawks didn't sell out for a game, nobody in the city could watch it on TV.
Damn.
Dick move.
Oh,
Dick
okay.
move. So he dies, his son gets the team, and his son says, screw it. We are turning this team around. We are not being tightwads with our money anymore. We're going to build this team back up. And, he scrapped it for parts, brought in new players, did his best to draft well, and said, make this a winning team for this city. A couple years later, they won the cup when nobody expected them to.
Yeah.
And I hope that the experience, this sort of trial by fire that Sheila has gone through, of being, run through the ringer on the internet and hearing all of the, disgruntled fans saying, screw Sheila, sell the team. You are never going to try. The Fords have never tried to win with this team.
Sure.
I hope that this jumpstarts her to, I guess, put a little more care and effort into it than the other Fords have,
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think what you're saying too is like, I think you bring up a really, really great point, because if you look at, there's a lot of teams right now that either do not have head coaches, right, heading into this offseason, or will not have head coaches. The Jets will most likely always have Adam Gase because, they have done something terrible in their previous life, and this has now been thrusted upon them.
It's their penance for giving Joe Namath notoriety. There
you go. You know what? I think that you might have hit the nail on the head. And, people talk about, like, obviously, like the Texans, and you have Deshaun Watson, you have the franchise QB, you have the franchise left tackle, you have some anchor pieces that are there. You talk about the Falcons, in which, like, they're essentially going to be like a rebuild team, right? Who knows how long Matt Ryan's going to be there? Like, that's a whole different story. What I feel like with the Lions is, like, this is one of those things where it actually could be a pretty attractive organization, because you're saying, hey, we want the right person for the job, both for GM and, of course, also for head coach, to come in. And it's kind of like, hey, it's blank slate. Like, it's tabula rasa in here. Like, you get to essentially go, you could draft a new quarterback, right, who could sit behind Matt Stafford, like you're saying. You could essentially play with whatever you want, right? You kind of have free reign. And I feel like that could be really appealing. And if they do that the right way, and I know fans are not going to want to hear this, like, it probably is going to take a few years, right? If we're trying to say, let's go clean slate and kind of build us back up, then I mean, I don't know. Like, I feel like that might be a little optimistic, and say, like, hey, like, this could wind, what could be worse than this right now? So at least now we have, like, the hope of some long-term success.
Exactly. Honestly, that's why I'm hoping that the Lions would hire John Dorsey. Just to see what he did in Cleveland.
Yeah.
Which was essentially using all the picks and, squeezing out whatever advantage he could. The only misstep was, trusting Freddie Kitchens. But, somebody else in that head coaching thing, I think the Browns make the playoffs the previous year.
Yeah.
Instead of astonishing everybody.
Oh, I agree. I agree.
John Dorsey or someone like him who is willing to do whatever possible to get the best possible player for every position that they can, and say, we are not worrying about winning. We will go out there and fight like hell, but we are building for the future.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, listen, I don't think you can go wrong with that. Like, if you're actually making progress, I don't think you can go wrong, because I feel like we are in such a, you were talking about results oriented fans before, like, we are in such a win now kind of like atmosphere, culture, society, whatever you want to, like, throw what moniker on there. And it's kind of like, that's why need to go out and get a free agent, need to go get him before the trade deadlines, need to go get blah, 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 blah. And you look around the league, and the majority of teams that do that spend the most amount of money in free agency, usually don't correlate to the successful teams in the NFL. The ones who are successful for longer periods of time are the ones who draft, develop, bring in guys when it makes sense, and that's how you get long-term success.
Exactly. Everybody forgets, all the years of near success and failure that Andy Reid had as the coach of the Eagles. Oh, and I got to experience that firsthand because I went to school in Philadelphia during the Donovan McNabb, Andy Reid years when they were so close to winning it all. And my senior year, they went to the Super Bowl and then they lost.
4th and 26.
Yeah, I went out and there were actually cop helicopters circling around in Philly, ready for the fans to riot, but they were too depressed to riot.
Yeah.
Like they were just sad.
Yeah.
And I did not blame them. It was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Which is why I was totally understanding for why they essentially burned the place down when they did win.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
You've won, you did it, you earned it. I'm not there. I don't care.
Go crazy.
Eat that horse dung.
I was about to say,
it'll be good for you.
You punch that horse in the mouth. Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. And I think one of the other, I don't want to say controversial, but I think something that the fan base is also split on is Matt Stafford himself, because you talk about, and I mentioned this, Adam is one of my top 10 quarterbacks, heading into this season, because I think that he is such an underrated player. And I think that it's a mix of, as you alluded to before, he's gotten hit so many times, and he's a tough guy. Holy crap, man. The fact that he can take that many hits behind that decrepit offensive line and still be like, okay, let's go second down now. Like it's incredible. The guy has a cannon for an arm, has not had a ton of weapons throughout his entire career, never has had a run game. And I think that in terms of what his future is going to look like, do you think that he is going to be part of this quote unquote new Detroit Lions, whatever this franchise becomes?
I have my doubts. I don't think at this point Stafford's pride, pardon the pun, will allow him to quit. I think he will keep playing for as long as he can until his body just will not let him, or until the organization themselves says, we're going to go in a different direction, but we will do everything we can to send you off with dignity and let, the city and the NFL know how much we appreciate what you've done for us. Because that's the only option at this point, that he has been through so much hell playing for this team, not, the least of which I think was the 0-16 season.
Yeah.
I would love it if he was, but unless there is some grand resurgence, if the Lions are 10-6 and make the playoffs next year as the wild card behind the Green Bay Packers, who will obviously win the division again.
Thank you.
I doubt it. And I feel bad for saying that, but at this point, rock bottom is easier to climb out of, I think, than constant mediocrity, which is what the Lions have had to go through many, many years. People remember 0-16 just because it was the first time since the 1970s that a team had gone 0-16.
Yeah.
But then we had the Browns, and now it looks like we're going to have the Jets, R.I.P. Springsteen.
I was about to say, sorry, Springsteen.
But, was another thing that I remember from my periphery is that the Lions were always one of those teams that maybe they're going to be good, maybe they're not.
Yeah.
After Barry Sanders quit on them, it was like, oh, that doesn't bode well, and it didn't bode well. It could have been boding better.
Yeah.
For that organization that they lost, an all-star player simply because they refused to build around him and just were content to let him carry the load, much as they were allowing Stafford to carry the load for so many years.
Well, I think that it's funny because I've talked about this a few times too, that I think in terms of the Green Bay Packers, you have Aaron Rodgers, who literally for years carried that football team. Yeah. And in the vast majority of cases, that's not successful. Like, you
No.
don't make the playoffs as many times as the Packers did. Like, you need that once in a generation talent to pull that off. And the Lions, who I think have an incredibly talented quarterback in Matthew Stafford, that just goes to show, like, hey, this is why you build around your franchise players. I mean, look at Joe Burrow, right? We talked about him.
Mhm.
You know, I don't know what Joe Burrow's career is going to look like, but he's had a great rookie season thus far. You know, they don't have an offensive line. The guy gets hammered week in and week out, suffers a season-ending injury. And like, how many times you see it with Andrew Luck, you see it with RG3, you know, you see it over and over and over again. And that's one of those questions that always in the back of my mind of like the what ifs. If like, if a Matthew Stafford goes to a team that has an offensive line, how good is he? Like, how far is he in those conversations?
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right, but that's the problem. You can't really get hung up on the what ifs. Thinking
Yeah.
about the what ifs will drive you crazy,
Trust me, I
trying
know.
to contemplate, all the possible paths and unknowns, whether it's, the glories of football team or where your childhood trauma came from.
Lots of places.
It is not healthy to think about what might have been.
Yeah.
You know,
Agreed.
it's only good to, to look at what has happened and, hope for better things for the future and appreciate when things went well.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. I completely and totally agree with that. Looking ahead, you were mentioning about the season, kind of like the season outlook. Hoping to finish, 500, finish with a good, hopefully, if you finish in third place and the Bears finish in fourth place, I will be the happiest person on the history of this planet. In terms of Sunday, so last year and the year prior too, the Lions gave the Packers a lot of problems, like a lot of problems. This year, obviously we have one up on you. Now being played in Detroit this coming Sunday. How do you see this game going? Because divisional games obviously are incredibly difficult to try and predict. They can go, wherever. The Broncos looked really good. Well, I wouldn't say really good, but they were competitive against the Chiefs. How do you see this Sunday going?
Packers are going to win. The only thing that I would like to see is I would like to see the defensive line and the linebackers for the Lions annoy Aaron Rodgers because they're not known for being a very good defense, either in, defending the run or quarterback pressure. I want to see someone on that line or in that linebacker core make Rodgers' day hell. Get in there, hurry him up, knock him down, one sack. If they get one sack and put him on edge, that would be a victory for me. Because that would show me, that there is somebody on the team that is, worth, keeping around and building around. Because right now, if you ask me off the top of my head, I can't name a single person on the Detroit defense that stands out to me. Which is not to say you cannot win with a no-name defense.
Sure.
One of the teams from my youth that I remember was when the Indianapolis Colts famously went on an amazing run with what they called the no-name defense.
Yeah.
And they made it all the way to the AFC Championship. They lost, but it was basically a very well coached group of people that nobody expected to do well, but they were, they were organized well, they played well, and they made people fear them. And nobody fears the Detroit Lions defense right now. I want one sign that there's something on this defense that is worth keeping around for the future. That is not worth trading away for draft capital or other players, younger players that could be developed within a new system that a new coach brings in. It's, what will the future of our team be and who do we want for the rebuild?
Well, I think, you bring up a really, really good point too, because I feel like that's what the front office is looking at too. It's like, listen, if we are going with that assumption that like we're cleaning house, like we are starting from scratch, you need to earn your spot, right? Like show that you want to be on this football team, play for this organization, and fight, even though we might not make the playoffs, whatever, it's not the result that we wanted. Show it, you know what I mean? And I think that's one of the most confusing things for me too. You bring in a guy like Matt Patricia, who's supposed to be this defense savant, like supposed to be like this amazing defensive mind. The Detroit defense doesn't get any better. And I think like that is part of it. People were saying, "Oh, should we bring in Matt Patricia as defensive coordinator?" And I was like, "Nope,
No,
just get out. Like just leave, just get out." So I think
hire him as a concession stand salesman if you want.
he could drive the cart around. He's really good at that.
He could deliver the beers to the different vendors around the stadium. Although I doubt many of them would survive the trip.
Yeah,
it's
not good. Yeah, I mean that's for me is like because that defense I want to say it might have been last year, might have been 2 years ago, where I was like, watch out for their defensive line because their defensive line should be pretty darn good, and it just never flourished in anything. I don't know if that was leadership. I don't know if that was personnel because I know you went out and got some big names, and it just didn't pan out.
It did not, and the fact that it did not, I at this point fully attribute to Patricia coming in with the I wrote a great play that won us the Super Bowl attitude, which is, not entirely true. All your accomplishments up to this point mean nothing if you don't produce anything in the future.
Agreed. And I think it, so many people when the Packers are looking for a head coach was looking at a guy like Josh McDaniels. And listen, I don't know what Josh McDaniels is like as a head coach, in 2020, but I think like how many more times do we need proof that like it's Bill Belichick? Like it's him. Like unless you get Bill Belichick, you're not going to get Bill Belichick's results because his tree, it's not going so well. Like it's not, growing without his roots.
Yeah, and Josh McDaniels only had I think one fluke year in Denver and then kind of cratered.
Oh
after
yeah.
that.
He gave him a bunch of money.
After the surprise of Tim Tebow and all that nonsense.
Yep.
And as soon as people figured out, oh, that's the only trick that they have, then we'll smother that and we'll do okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm not about that. But yeah, I think it's going to be very curious to see what the Lions franchise turns into because, like I said, I'm hopeful for you guys that, like, again, you're going to kind of, even if it's like from square one, build the team back up right, get the pieces that you need, probably invest in an offensive line so whatever quarterback is behind there doesn't get murdered the majority of the games.
Doesn't wake up screaming at night, Khalil Mack.
Yeah, exactly. I still do that. So I understand that. I understand that PTSD. But Jim B, this has been an absolute pleasure. I so appreciate you coming on, having a drink with me, sharing some stories, and this was utterly fantastic. So I want to thank you for that. And please tell the people, besides obviously in all of the game chats, where can people find the epicness that is Jim B?
Well, if you ever see a flickering shadow in the blind spot of your vision, and then you turn and you swear you saw a shadow just scuttle out of sight, and the air smells a little bit smokier than it was, that's where you'll find me. But failing that, you can also find me on Twitter at Jim Burchell. That will be listed in the description, spelled correctly, so that you will be able to get to it. Ideally, right, Tom?
I mean, you're going to send it to me, so yeah.
Yes, I will.
Listen, you'll always be Jim B to me. That's all it's going to be. Like it's you'll be like, I'm going to get a letter one day from Jim Burchell. I'm like, I don't know who this is. Like listen, Papa Grossi knows he has Jimmy B. Right? He puts on the little, and I'm like, Dad, you can't. It's Papa Grossi can't. It's Jim B. You can't.
Yeah. Well, he's also the one who created Trubinsky, so I don't expect him to get every single name right.
Listen, it's he's getting up there. It's it's fine. It's fine. He's a Cowboys fan. He's been through a lot. So
yeah.
But Jim B, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate everything that you do. I look forward to seeing you, obviously, in the chats to come. And thank you for being part of the Grossi posse. You are greatly appreciated, my friend. Thank you.
It's all you. Like I said in that 100K video, you have done your best to create, a space for people to appreciate the sport and do it in a way that is positive and constructive and, acknowledging the good and the bad therein, and just like the sport has done for so many years, improving it into a better state of being all the time.
Well, cheers to that, my friend. Cheers to that.
Fucking A.
Well, you know where to find me on the things, you know.
You could find him at TomGrossiComedy.com or Tom Grossi on any of the social medias you see down below. And thank you again to all of the Patreon donators and the YouTube members. But until then, this is Tom freaking fracking Grossi. And as always,
it was Tom Grossi Comedy. But other than that, perfect. Go Pack Go.